This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We're brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Friday night after the Wolves and Philadelphia 76ers game here in Iowa. I'm here with Britt Robson back at our hotel across the street from Wells Fargo Center Arena, something like that, in Des Moines, Iowa. Britt, I think the plan just for this one is let's just get into the different takeaways we had from this game tonight. I think the place to start is probably with Ant. This is our first time seeing him,
right?
This season. What stood out to you from that performance?
I think that just the casualness with which he can affect the game in both a positive and negative way is pretty fantastic. The ball stuck to him initially, and everyone else was moving the ball. It was just very obvious, the contrast, and he gradually got into it a little bit better. And then he began to find a rhythm on his jumper. And I think the beginning, though, was that you had a team that played extremely well in terms of flow and in terms of moving without the ball. And one of the things that in the way Ant stands out in a negative way is not only doesn't he move the ball when he has it, but he doesn't move when he doesn't. And so that constant churn that looks great because the ball doesn't stick to anybody and 5 people or 4 people are moving is great. And when that wasn't happening with Ant and he wasn't hitting his shot, he felt like the worst player on the half-court offense, which is weird because he's the face of the franchise, theoretically.
Well, it's not the worst. It's just it sticks out a little bit because the main theme, if people haven't watched these first 2 preseason games, or I don't even know if people were able to watch
technical difficulty.
On League Pass. I mean, but I think a big theme of these 2 games has been the ball movement and
absolutely
and how much it seems to be like what Finch has said he wants the offense to look like for years. Yet it's happening, now with this team. And the first game, Ant doesn't play in that game. Julius Randle doesn't play in that game, and they're just the more talented most talented isolation players on this team. But what comes with that is you become kind of the ball stopper. And it's just going to be interesting to watch that integrate with Ant and Julius within, the other 7-8 guys in the rotation who are it does seem like the other guys are going to play in the flow. And it stood out that Ant was not doing that at the beginning, but then in the second quarter it did happen.
Right.
And
he began to pick
the
his
isolation
spots.
came in the flow. Yeah.
The thing that is different about Ant than anyone else, and again, you correctly point out that that's because he is really, really good when he holds onto the ball a lot of the time. But what the Wolves have learned how to do or are doing in these first 2 preseason games, especially in the first half, is this sometimes that the ball movement is for its own sake. You just move. It's almost like a weave that is waiting for something to pop.
Yep.
But it is that movement keeps a momentum going that you want. It's like slowly stirring soup or something, But the soup is moving. It's not. And that is the way it worked in the first quarter, at least, especially as you had Dante DiVincenzo, Mike Conley, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, the other 4 starters on the floor.
Who are about it.
All moving the ball, all doing this weave. And they didn't necessarily have an open man other than the obvious man kind of next in the line on the chain until somebody broke through with a cut or somebody screened and got somebody else open, and then they came up and that left somebody else open. But that's just basic basketball. If you hold the ball, none of those things happen as easily. They may happen, but it's fruitless kind of, and it discourages movement without the ball. And so it's been wonderful to see they've come out like that team, like that flow offense that Finch has preached and has envisioned for his 2.5, 3 years here. And when Ant joins the party, of course, it isn't quite the same automatic ball movement, but there is also ultimately more efficiency. It's maybe not as beautiful, but it's more efficient because he is such a capable scorer, and because he can draw people, and just instead of 3 or 4 nice passes, you get one, and is a layup.
It was interesting, I thought, in the locker room after the game when we talked to DiVincenzo, who is definitely a ball mover.
Incredible.
Whatever. We could do a whole other segment on Dante DiVincenzo.
Right.
But I thought it was interesting because I think we've done 2 media availabilities with him, and he's been asked questions about being a ball mover, and this seems to fit you all so well. And what he said both times is like, yeah, that's great, but we need to have another gear too where we can kind of lean into our isolation scores and do stuff like lean into Ant and Julius at what they could do. And he received a follow-up question asking, well, why do you need to have both those gears? He's like, it's actually really good and important and rare that teams can do both things, be a ball movement team, be an isolation team. And it's important to have that because what his words were, because the playoffs, you need to have that for the playoffs. And I think when you are a team with aspirations to go deep in there, they need to be a team that cultivates the offensive identity that they want to have, that the ball movement element, but they need to have that other gear too. That's important to them come playoff time. And that all checks out in my head. I think we're going to probably pull our hair out at times during the season where it's going to be, some group out there where like, man, the ball is moving and they're hitting threes and, oh, there you go, Jaden cut back door dunk. And then, Ant or Randall, it'll get sticky with.
Right.
But I do think we need to kind of remember that greater goal in the process of all this. And I think that's important. And
we also have to remember that you have Rudy Gobert, who's going to be rolling a lot. There's a lot of movement without the ball, but it is the same movement. It's a very predictable movement most of the time. And he is somewhat stilted in the way he plays, but also efficient. And then you have Ant, who is efficient, but again, limited. What you miss is going to be the flow. But if you look at the scoreboard and you look at the plus minus or whatever, Dante is right. Sometimes what looks beautiful isn't necessarily showcasing itself on the scoreboard. And when it is, it's great. But then again, a team will adjust. And when a team adjusts, that is the whole point, right? Mm-hmm. Is if you have a versatile offense, one of the things the Wolves did last season that really made them take a step forward is they diversified their defense. It's no longer a Rudy Gobert-centric defense all the time. You can do other things. Now, it's no longer an Ant or Cat-centric offense all the time. You can do a lot of other different things. That doesn't mean you have to throw one away, but it does mean you should have the wisdom to counterpunch the right way.
Yeah.
If an offense is a defense is trying to take something away from you, then go to your thing that they're not trying to take away from you and exploit it. And I think that's what's impressed me about DiVincenzo is, I asked him a question. He was the king of the walk-up three sometimes, especially with the Knicks. In the playoffs, he'd just come down and bang. And
he's going to still be that.
That's a threat. And he's literally turned it down in a major way a few times. He loves to work with Conley on that weave because as he said tonight, he gets Conley open on that second side, and then Conley has the option of running a much cleaner pick and roll or just spotting up and shooting, using a screen. And, that's why Conley loves to play with DiVincenzo.
Well, and I think about, if you can get Conley on the second side and get him into a pick and roll with Rudy, that's going to be, remember when they would do that get action, just the two of them, empty corner, what that will be is the get action, but the defense won't be ready for it because it's coming from the second side and you're scrambling into it. I think Rudy's an interesting character in this whole ball movement offense, right? And I think maybe in most people's heads, and probably would have been in my head as well, you wouldn't think of him as a guy, as a flow offense guy. I think Rudy really is. Like a diving roll man is as a
Finch
play
agrees
finisher.
with you. I mean, Finch is bothered by the fact that they don't exploit Gobert's movement more often. I worry about his hands, so I'm a little bit less
fair.
gung-ho.
But how about this? But what about his passing? His passing was that was something he took.
It was a
step
robotic pass, but it was an effective pass.
And I
mean,
think
he would do that little spin move and find somebody on the perimeter. Right.
But you're fair pushback on. He's got to catch it first
right.
to be able to make the robot pass. But the robot pass in a spread floor setting where the ball is moving, if you are able to get it to Rudy there and he is able to catch it, that should be one dribble dunk or spray it to the corner. And Rudy did that last year.
If you have Rudy Gobert receiving the ball within 3 feet of the rim, defenses are going to collapse. If they don't collapse, they're going to get yelled at by their coach. Mm-hmm. So what will happen, there's no better kick out than going the other way to collapsing defenders. And so they're going to be open shots. The question then becomes, I mean, there was a period of the game that I thought was interesting. They came out, second game in a row. It's very remarkable, the trajectory of the two preseason games have been eerily similar.
Yeah.
You know, how they came out and they were just nailing those open threes, and then they began to keep the ball movement going great, but they were missing the shots they were creating. And so, and they were predominantly threes. They were actually 15 for 19 in the first half from inside the arc, 15 for 19 from two, which is phenomenal for a whole quarter. And so, I think that the idea, and let's, I guess at this point we may need a few caveats. One is LeBron James and Anthony Davis didn't play in the first one. Joel Embiid didn't play in this one.
Sure.
On the other hand, the Wolves didn't have their people. Mm-hmm. Randall and both games, Gobert for the second game and for the first game. But
those don't bother me that much.
You can only do what you can do.
Did you move it or did you not move it?
What Finch is worried about is he says, I don't quite remember. I wasn't this excited about the offense after 2 games last year. I mean, I think he likes to dramatize that a little bit to remind people we're not going to lag on this.
I disagree.
Again.
I remember
you
that.
Remember it
I remember it well. I remember the Toronto game in the opener. And they lost the opener, and it got super sticky.
That's
particularly true. I asked Finch about that today because he referenced
we
moved the ball really well in the preseason last year, and then it dried up at the beginning of the season.
He says it continually, I mean, he said that 3 or 4 times already in the preseason, and I'm glad you remembered. If he's talking about one game, it isn't so much that first game wasn't sticky, because it was sticky. What I don't remember is fantastic ball movement in the preseason otherwise. I mean, I didn't see a lot of that. Put it this way. The simple thing to say is I like their offense now better than I have in the last year and a half. Again, all the caveats, really small sample size, really inadequate personnel in terms of full strength.
It seems like they're doing what the coach wants. The philosophy is set. We kind of understand what that philosophy is.
Right.
And it seems like this group, with the one outlier of Ant in the first quarter of tonight's game, have all played that way.
They want to play that way even more. I really think they want to play that way. Naz Reid loves to play this way.
Jaden
is loving to play this way if he gets featured, and he kind of has been.
Yeah,
I mean, in a very, very appropriate way. I think I was asking Finch tonight. You don't have Randall and Rudy on the floor, 2 separate games. Can you get what you want in terms of being satisfied that Jaden is getting the kind of touches you want? And he was satisfied with that. He likes the way Jaden is being featured right now, and thinks it can be sustained even with Rudy and or Randall on the floor.
He noted Jaden at the 4 as a roller in this game, which I noticed in the beginning. They used him as a screener, which kind of goes against everything he said to you in your interview and at media day. Of Jaden's going to handle it. Right. I mean, it's Jaden because they played the first game without Julius Randle and tonight without Rudy Gobert.
Right.
Jaden played the 4. I thought Jaden looked stronger, bigger, and more ready to play the 4. Whereas 3 years ago, when he kind of had to play the 4 by default, I was like, what are we doing here?
Right.
I like it. I
And
almost kind of like that more than the idea of him running a pick and roll.
I agree.
Jaden
I actually agree with
being
that.
the
One
screener.
of the things I think is also really important if we're talking about the 4, or even in general, but especially if he's at the 4, is we had seats tonight that weren't great in terms of the fact that there were a bunch of people in front of us, but we were right along the baseline underneath the net. And Jaden is really concentrating on rebounding and doing a pretty good job. His position is strong. He's not doing a tremendous amount of box outs, but he is getting early position and
snatch and go,
getting contested rebounds. And I think that's a huge development because it is kind of the deal Finch has made with him. If we're going to feature you more on offense, you have to be more a part of the offense, which is initiating the offense with a rebound, which is driving and kicking when you have the ball rather than being tunnel visioned, finding people other than Rudy when you're in the mood to dish. And I think, relatively speaking, he's done that. He's been one of those willing guys that's been that 4 or 5 man group that circles and moves. And, I mean, Jaden and Naz together, Jaden and DiVincenzo together, Jaden and, Jaden is one of the movement guys who also, by the way, Ant just likes to pass to Jaden. He just likes it.
Always has.
And I'm unless I'm proven otherwise, I think that Jaden's field goal percentage on feeds from Ant are much more accurate. Those two guys, can play together really well. And to DiVincenzo's point, they can play either way really well. Yeah. They can play that slow half-court game that they sometimes devolve to, and they can also play an up-tempo.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think Naz is folding into that really well too.
Well, Naz is becoming a complete player.
Let's do Naz after our break here. Today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company, and want to put on all of your radars that me and Britt will be doing a live show at Falling Knife Brewing Company a week from tomorrow. Next Saturday, October 19th, they're having Wolves Fest at Falling Knife, and I guess we will be part of the entertainment doing a live show at 5 o'clock, but kind of from like 3 to 7. It's just gonna be a big get together of Wolves fans. Obviously, Falling Knife is a place that a lot of Wolves fans go to watch games during the season. So that's, again, just mark that on your calendar. October 19th, a couple days right before the season starts. I think on the 22nd. We would love to see you there. They were bottling or boxing or canning, I guess would be the word. The second apron beer that they are releasing for Wolves Fest, which is gonna I'll show the video on another episode later.
I can't wait. And not only do they make really good beer, but it's a good vibe every time we've been there. And whether we're outside or inside, the questions are usually solid. Mm-hmm. I
love the timing too. I love that we're doing it like right
3 days before, right, and also right after. Now it's 48 hours after instead of 24 hours after, but right after they play a game against Denver at home.
Right. I forgot about that. Oh, and then just also go to Falling Knife to watch the Lynx in the WNBA finals. That is kind of similar setup there as they had for the Wolves.
2 wins until Ring 5, baby.
That's crazy, man. I missed the game last night. I know you were watching.
Yeah, it was tremendous. But again, there will be Lynx fans there. There'll be Wolves fans there. It's a basketball bar.
Yeah, well, and it's becoming a basketball town. Basketball town. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Let you know, to remind you to make a Prize Picks lineup in advance of this Sunday. If you are looking up to put together a daily fantasy lineup, 2 that I like for the Sunday slate are David Montgomery to rush for over 58.5 yards. The Lions are coming off a bye. Their center is back. Dallas, they're playing against Dallas. Dallas's defense is missing a ton of guys. I also like DeAndre Swift to go for more than 18.5 receiving yards. The Bears' screen game is really taken off, and DeAndre Swift has been humming. You know that if you have him in fantasy. So, as always, we're brought to you by Prize Picks. I want to remind you to check that out, particularly before a football Sunday. Use the promo code DANE, and they will give you a $50 sign-up bonus when you submit your first $5 lineup. All right, Brett, let's talk Naz. This is where I'm at. I was trying to ask him a question about this in a weird way, asking the player himself about this. What I'm trying to get to is a bad idea. What my fundamental question with Naz this season is, what does he look like unleashed? Where does the ceiling go of this when he's always been somewhat of a role specific player, limited in the minutes that he plays, has very rarely been given the opportunity to be a 30-plus minute a night guy in his career, and I think that's kind of the expectation or something close to that this year. And I'm just trying to put a realistic ceiling on what that is, because my sense is there are not diminishing returns to Naz Reid. Where as you expand the role, where like a lot of 6 men guys who won 6 men of the year, like you're like, yeah, maybe if we made you the starting shooting guard, you probably wouldn't have the same potency.
Would get
Jamal
worse.
Crawford.
Right.
And I guess I don't know this, but my feeling is it's not going to matter if Naz is playing against second units or whatever. I think in an
certainly
expanded
didn't matter
role,
last year. He
right?
came in for Cat, played with the starters. He was better. He had a higher net rating. The Wolves had a higher net rating, is the correct way to say it, when Rudy was with Naz than when Rudy was with Cat. I think that's very significant because defense is the thing that rocks the Wolves' boat. It is what they do best. And when Rudy and Naz were on the floor for over 900 minutes, they allowed less than 100 points per 100 possessions. And so
way less.
You've got that. The reason I am, people will know that it was less than 18 months ago, probably even less than 12 months ago, that I was not on the Naz bandwagon. I was a lonely man against Naz Reid and looking sillier by the day. And, I've just got to say, everything is lining up. I mean, they traded Cat. You've got to say, in addition to DiVincenzo instead of Dillingham as Conley insurance, the biggest reason is because they could not afford, realistically, to pay Rudy, Naz, and Cat all at the same time. And you can probably get Naz for about 60% top dollar of what you're paying Naz.
Or paying Cat.
Yeah, you can get 60% of...
we had that conversation
Naz will
today.
get 60% of Cat's salary, and I actually think that Naz will be 80 to 90%, and I'm feeling conservative about that. Yeah. Because I know some of the ways that Naz, I believe, is already better than Cat.
Well, and also we got to talk about Naz within the context of the offense that we know Finch wants to run, that the ball movement and the flow that we're talking about. I do, in that context, I do think it's fair to say that Naz Reid is 80-90% of Karl Anthony Towns. In a different context, or if you went and put Naz in New York and what Cat's being asked to do there,
oh yeah, absolutely,
as a rim protector, as a as a functioning screen setter and those sort of things, Naz would not be 80-90% of it. But I do think in this context, yeah, at least.
Also, I mean, we almost kind of buried the lead here. Naz Reid was up against Andre Drummond tonight, and the Sixers really tried to exploit that. And Naz,
we probably should talk about the basketball game that we got to watch. Doesn't seem like a lot of people.
I mean, it was really interesting. Naz battled, and occasionally, I just love the fact that every now and then, he tried to front him sometimes. He tried to kind of phantom play behind him sometimes, but sometimes he just bodied him, especially on a turn, or when Drummond received the pass right away, Naz was there, or when Drummond tried to put back after a rebound, Naz was there. His judgment on when he got aggressive on Drummond, I was extremely impressed with, because you and I, because we watch the games, have been leaning into the idea that Naz is better at the 3 than he is at the 5. He still is, But his argument for being a backup 5, while still not a great argument, I don't want to think that the Wolves' chances of a championship rest on Naz's ability to back up Gobert, because I don't think, they didn't play Anthony Davis or Joel Embiid these last 2 games.
Yeah.
But they did play Andre Drummond, who outweighs him by 50 pounds minimum. So
I am really interested about what the non-Gobert minutes look like this season.
That is very good point. That's another big discussion we don't want to get into at the moment, because I asked Naz, if you're a matchup nightmare, what do you want to do? Do you want to punish bigs or do you want to punish littles? And he said, without hesitation, he wants to punish littles. And that reignites the Naz at the 3 argument, even if you're substituting Randall in for Cat at the 4. Can you play that across the board? I think I asked Finch about that before the game. What about Naz at the 3? Is that off the board? And he wouldn't take it off the board. I don't think it's as obviously a thing to do now, but I think once we find out what Randall can do.
Yeah.
The point is, in my opinion, Naz's versatility, he has turned himself into a multifaceted player at both ends of the court. If you are what you can guard, he's become a multi-position player. He can guard 3s, and he can guard 4s if he's next to Rudy. And on the evidence of tonight, he can win the matchup by slightly limiting a big 5 and then destroying him at the other end with above-the-break 3s, which are the things that Cat can do as well. Naz is faster. He's got a better dribble. He makes quicker decisions. And all of those things argue for a maturing player to get better. The more you see the court, the more you know your teammates, the more confidence you have in yourself, the better your decision-making, and the more you trust yourself. And if that can happen, I think the Wolves are going to be looking at a big payday for Naz down the line, and I think they knew that last year, and that's one of the main reasons Cat is in New York.
What do you, if Naz's answer to would you rather punish bigs or smalls is smalls, what do you think Cat's answer to that would be?
I think it would be smalls too, but I don't think that I think Cat can punish smalls, but I also think he can't. Cat doesn't have the same flexibility that Naz does in terms of how he can punish them, in my opinion. I mean, his drive to the left-hand side, as you pointed out, like 2 or 3 years ago, was one of the best moves in the NBA. Mm-hmm. So I can't discount Cat's being able to take somebody off the dribble. But Cat doesn't have Naz's handle. I've never seen Cat up fake from the three-point line, from the corner three-point line, drive through 2 people and tomahawk dunk something. I mean, I've seen Naz do that like a half a dozen times.
Yeah. I think Cat's answer, whether it's what he would answer or not, would be bigs. I mean, that's when he was most potent. Like, that you'd take the Memphis series, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you had to pull. Steven Adams played 1 quarter against Cat, and then they told him you're not playing the rest of the series. And I guess I'm interested to see more of this version of Naz, this improved version of Naz, playing at the 5, guarded by like Jonas Valanciunas.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? Because when Cat gets guarded by Jonas Valanciunas, that's a problem for Jonas Valanciunas.
Right.
And I think it would be for Naz.
Mm-hmm.
For Naz too. I think Naz just wants to be going against smalls more. Like I think he wants to be a 3 more than he wants to be a 5. But at the end of the day, what he wants most is to play.
Well, and also, I mean, now that I'm thinking about specific matchups, because you gave me Valanciunas, Anthony Davis will destroy Naz Reid.
Yep.
I mean, that is a matchup, and you know why? Because Anthony Davis is athletic too, and he's bigger and he's stronger.
Yeah,
I mean, so if Naz faces a bigger, stronger athlete, he's screwed. Mm-hmm. Whereas Cat can basically, because he's a pure shooter and because he can, I mean, the way he gets into Jokic, he uses his size and weight. Mm-hmm. Cat still is like listed over 250, and Naz has got to be 230 or something. I mean, those pounds do come to matter. So
It was encouraging to see him guard Drummond today in his new even sleeker physique and be like, yeah, I can handle at least a backup 5. But Drummond is a true backup, a good backup 5.
He is somebody who gets by on putbacks and getting fouled and is just his brawn, And so I share with you that, if we're looking at after Rudy, Luca Garza in small minutes, Randall is a small ball 5, or Naz is a small ball 5. And as I look at the roster, those are the options. None of those options is a jump for joy option for me, So that if there is a downside to the cat trade, that is the one. It's Randall, Naz, or Luca Garza are your 3 options when Rudy isn't playing.
Yeah. That's scary if Rudy gets hurt.
Oh, yeah. If Rudy gets hurt, then,
or if he's out for I'm just saying for a week. I'm not saying.
I think if Rudy got hurt for a cat period of time, 6 weeks or something, then I really think that they would go much differently.
yeah, they would need to. They would
go Jaden at the 4 and just do something that was. They would go small ball.
Yeah, and they would just hit the gas.
Finch would
right.
If the alternative was to slowly get pounded, or bring Greg Monroe's carcass in, you just can't. We're at the place now where if you're going to go for a ring, you have to be able to hit back when you're weak. Mm-hmm. And the best way for that rosters is now constituted.
I like that, yeah.
Is to hit back, is to have Conley and DiVincenzo and McDaniels all on the court at the same time, with a smaller big, and then run the hell out of them.
Right.
And move the ball.
Let's go from Naz Reid to the guy who aspirationally, keyword aspirationally, is the next Naz Reid story here, and I think that's Josh Minott is the hope, and we heard, very similar to how much we heard Josh Minott's having a great summer. That's what we were hearing, 3-4 years ago about Naz, and obviously, of course, we're hearing the all the good stuff and the best stuff, and I honestly I wasn't really believing the Minott hype stuff. It
was an attitude thing as much as anything for me.
But this summer when I was hearing it, and they're like, "Hey man, Finch is going to play him. He's going to be in the rotation." I'm like, "What?" And I watched these 2 games and fully acknowledging that I'm overreacting, but I'm in. I'm in on Minott, and I don't know what that's in on him being the 10th man, but if a month ago you and me would have sat down and were like, "Hey Britt, let's make a rotation here,"
right?
That no way. I don't even write down Minott to consider giving him minutes.
Right.
He is. I am factoring it in here. I am impressed by what I've seen in 2 somewhat real preseason games. Right. I'm impressed by it. Whether this is a right or wrong thing to do, it's something I put into my analysis. Is I watch guys shoot a lot, and I judge their shot on my own personal barometer. And I think Josh Minott has a significantly better jump shot right now to my eye test. And I thought that I was saying that before these 2 games where he's been, lights out shooting it. A little bit of confirmation bias there for sure. But, dude, if he can shoot, he's athletic. He's gotten bigger. He does have some of that, Nas drive of, I got to make this because I haven't really made any money in the league. I'm ready,
right.
And I mean that in a totally healthy way. That was a totally healthy motivator for Naz. I think Josh Minott's is ready to go. I'm interested to see some of his processing speed in a real game and decision making, but the confidence and the jump shot and the size and the physicality and the kind of recognition of a moment potentially being there for him. I don't know if I was a Naz believer, early on. Minott was.
I
more
was a
so
big.
your guy.
I loved Minott his rookie year. I was soured on him. I thought he had a terrible summer league his second year.
Sure.
And I kind of soured on his attitude. I thought he was really petulant. I thought he was somebody who thought he deserved more playing time and was kind of peeved that he wasn't getting it, which seemed ridiculous to me. And I also thought he got a little bit too heroic in his third summer league and just beginning to act like he was better than he was playing.
Sure.
And I thought he didn't have a very good summer league, quite honest with you. But then all of a sudden, everybody was saying where Finch really began to brag about him was after that summer league. Mm-hmm. And then apparently he did an interview, which I missed. I was out of town. But you said he had like a I don't care attitude, like I'm not
I can't believe you haven't seen it. It was literally the best. It was the best interview of media. It was the last interview of media day. So I think you had left. Listeners know I played a couple clips.
Yeah, I did leave. Yeah, right before that one. Right.
Yeah, but he just I literally think he had a mentality. What he's saying is he had a mentality shift of like stop caring about results, and he said that's what has made the shift in his jump shot.
Well, I think that's marvelous. I do know there's been a sea change. There's been a change in the way he plays, and the way I would describe the way he plays is that he used to want to stand out, and now he is trying to figure out how to be the best cog in a 5-player unit. Mm-hmm. He is playing much more teamwork-oriented than he was. His movement without the ball is now a movement where he doesn't know whether or not he's going to get the ball, and it isn't as important to him. It used to be if he moved, he was ready to be a martyr if he wasn't going to catch it, and was going to not do anything other than finish if he did catch it. Mm-hmm. Now I've seen him get the ball, and then do another extra pass, do a drive and kick. I've seen him, he had a sequence tonight. His awareness on defense is another thing. He's one of those guys that used to kind of break the structure, sure. and he was a pretty good gambler. He gets blocks and steals based on his athleticism, but now he's gambling less and still getting those things. He's getting things in the system, and one of the ways that happened tonight was he intercepted an entry pass. It was kind of a lob. It was kind of not a lob for a basket, but a lob over the defensive man fronting him. And he snuffed that out and grabbed it, went down the floor. Usually, in the old Josh Minott, I know where to try to finish that sucker. Yeah. As soon as he stole the ball, he would, try to drive to the rim, come hell or high water. Instead, he drove just enough, kicked it out to the man in the corner. The guy missed the shot. Minott stayed with it, got the rebound, put it home, got fouled. It was an N1. Yeah. He had a steal. What should have been an assist, but because it wasn't an assist, he got an N1 putback. And that shows somebody who was playing in the system, not giving up on plays, initiating plays. And here's what I worry about. I worry about the fact that he's not going to get these minutes. And Finch kind of intimated that when you said, how much can he do? And Finch was saying, well, first let's see about sustainability. And essentially what Finch was saying is we're past baby steps, but he's still not walking perfectly. And so, it's like, and because it's a deep team, if Minott gets 12 minutes a night, we're going to be surprised,
For sure.
And if Minott gets 8 to 10 minutes a night, it'll seem like a big step forward, but will it seem like a big step forward to him? See, that's what right now things are paying off for him. His, flying
What is the frustration like if on October 22nd in LA he never takes his warm-up off?
Exactly. And that's entirely possible. Mm-hmm. And so that is something to think about, and in terms of
he seems like
upside.
11 right now, right? He seems like 11.
Right.
If we got the starting 5,
yeah,
and then you go Naz and Dante 6, 7, Nikhil 8, Rob 9, Ingles 10,
yep,
and Minott 11.
Exactly.
I'm not saying
and
that's
that puts him ahead of T.J. Shannon, which is a correct thing to do.
And he moved up the ladder.
That's a switch.
Yeah.
That I think that when
in our perspective, maybe the team
when
had
I
that.
talked to Finch, and I was, when he was talking about, there's 3 guys that are going to be competing. There's going to be TJ, Josh, and I think it was Dillingham, but it might have been
Leonard. Yeah, we were talking about this
whoever
earlier.
it was.
Yeah.
He's clearly ahead of Leonard Miller. I think he's clearly ahead. He's certainly getting, in terms of the minutes, ahead of the rotation.
Mm-hmm.
You could argue that TJ's got a 3-4 thing like Josh has a 3-4 thing.
Like
in
positions?
terms of positioning.
Yeah, okay.
Combo forward, whatever you want to call it. And I think that both like to go hard to the rim. Both try to pride themselves on hard-nosed defense. But by the eye test, and probably, certainly I know, plus minus, Josh is killing it. I mean, the Wolves were, I think I tweeted this out, I think the Wolves were plus 12 in like less than 5 minutes he played in that first half. I mean, he was clearly one of the spark plugs.
Yeah.
When they came on the floor and they had that go-go
lineup.
lineup.
I do want to make fun of you for citing plus minus in a preseason game, but you're right. It was noticeable. Like the spark plug, it was that, and it's been that every time he's been on the floor in preseason, which is interesting. It's just interesting.
It is, and you're right about the shot. I mean, it used to be that if Minott shot a 3, it was a lot of arms. I mean, we
were sitting there.
Yep,
we were sitting there pregame, watching him go.
The rotation.
The ball, the rotation on the ball is different, and he's not doing the thing where his arm looks like a bicycle, and it's
right. That's right.
There's a consistent release point time after time, and I think for guys who are finding and honing a jump shot, it's not like he was some terrible.
But
shooter.
He was gangly. He was a gangly shooter.
You just needed to get a repeatable release point, and I think that's something Jaden had to find. And sometimes when Jaden goes into the wasn't the end of the regular season, Jaden was one of his last 24 threes or something like that.
Right.
And it was, and I remember looking at him putting together some clips of that, and it was an inconsistent release point in it. And I think what if there's a summer league you were at Minott's first one when we were there?
Right.
Would have I ever bet on Josh Minott
or something? Right.
Finding a consistent mechanics for his jump shot? No, and let's not crown him a 40-point 3-point shooter or anything now. But it's noteworthy that the shot is different. It looks different. It looks definitely different up close and in person.
Right.
We just know that. To us it does, and we're there. We've seen it in those situations. The confidence in it, according to him, 2 weeks ago, before he played in any of these games, was he said, quote, "This is the most confident I've ever been in my jump shot." And then he went out and did this in these 2 games. So I don't know. I wasn't a big Minott guy at all a month ago, but I'm moving there, and I know this is moving towards the 10th man thing. But I don't know, man. This summer in my head, I had kind of checked out of he's on a non-guaranteed contract. Who knows what his long term is?
And what is interesting is he 1, 2, or 3 years younger than Shannon.
I think he's 22 now.
Shannon's 24, so he's 2 years younger than Terrence Shannon.
Mm-hmm.
So and he's got those years of one of the things I will give the Wolves a lot of credit for is they work hard on development. They have a guy each. Mm-hmm. There's an assistant coach or whatever the name of the coach is down the line from assistant coach. They assign a player
development coach. Yeah.
And it really is. They work hard, and there's a lot of repetition to it. We've seen Luca Garza shoot millions of shots. Anybody who shows up early sees these guys who aren't going to get off the bench, really working hard with their individual coach. And Minott was always one of those guys. Minott was probably second only to Garza in terms of people who just pounded the rock on it.
Yeah. Okay, that's enough Josh Minott talk. Rob Dillingham and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I think, didn't play that well tonight.
Right.
And I think that's relevant because they're kind of leaders in the clubhouse for backup point guard. Mm-hmm. And I don't care that they had a bad game. That doesn't do it, but it was noticeable to me the ways in which both of them struggled tonight when they were given the keys to be the point guard when Conley wasn't on the floor. I mean, Nickeil Alexander-Walker started the third quarter, the second half,
it
for Mike
badly.
Conley, and it went really poorly. He was not able to get them into offense, and it was turnover.
They pressured him. They basically said, "This guy's not a point guard. We will show you."
And then the third possession, DiVincenzo brought it up, and the fourth possession, Ant did, and that was kind of it.
And he was over on the side. And two things I'll say about that. One is he is a huge confidence player.
Yep.
And when he doesn't feel confident, you can see it. And you worry about it because first of all, anybody who's ever talked to the guy, he's just the guy is incapable of telling a lie. I mean, he will tell you what is on his mind, no matter how revelatory, and that makes him somebody you want to protect. You want to say, all right, well, you're saying this. Make sure you add something here that doesn't make you look quite so vulnerable, and he's just going forward with it. And so there's that aspect of it. You root for the guy as a result. And to watch him out there, he said just before I left town, an interview maybe a week ago now, my point is to alleviate Conley, give Conley some rest.
Yeah.
In so many words, what he kept talking about is, I want to be the guy who can fill in for Mike Conley at the point. And I've been working on that, and I find people. And what Finch said to me in the long interview is, less is more with Nickeil. What you want him to do is work out the 3 or 4 things he does well and keep it at that. Don't dress it up. Don't try to be a point guard necessarily. Right. Be a good combo guard who can fill in as a point guard, but don't regard yourself as a point guard kind of.
Yeah.
I don't think they have the plan for NAW to be the point guard when Dillingham is ready.
Sure.
They think that Dillingham will be the point guard. Which
I think Nickeil views that as an opportunity to play more minutes.
Yes.
And I think he's in danger of his minutes getting kind of in trouble right now.
DiVincenzo is beginning to own DiVincenzo is going to be eating a bigger piece of the pie.
Yes.
I mean, that is, if that doesn't happen, then Dante DiVincenzo is like doing some kind of weird Oasis shit that,
he's going to play.
Is like, he is becoming extremely important to the identity of this team.
Yep.
And so you got to give him stuff. Ant, Jaden, let's face it, they speak for themselves in terms of minutes. Mike Conley speaks for himself. Randall's going to get minutes, and Naz is going to contest for those minutes, and Rudy. So, yes, you are looking at – the question then becomes, I think Jace Frederick asked this in the pregame, what's the span of what you want for NAW? And then Jace put 17 to 29 on it. Or maybe it wasn't with Finch. Maybe it was with another coach or something. But anyway, the point being is that
I was there.
I do think that if NAW gets too far below 20 minutes a game, again, you're messing the same thing we just they're talking about with Minott.
I don't think he's going to play 20 minutes a game.
One of the problems with a really deep team, and it's a nice problem to have,
right,
is that you can have people get out of their cool zone, their zone where
just
they're
time
at their
to get
best.
the rhythm.
Yeah,
time to catch rhythm.
And so, on the other hand, it is really hard to watch the core 6. Assuming Randall is going to be the goods. I mean, that's what Finch and Randall both seem to be telling us. It'd be very hard for me to imagine in a player option year next year that Randall is going to fall out of the top 6 or 7 without some kind of heavy displacement thing happening. So you're right. I mean, one of the positive things about NAW, to finish the second point finally, is that he was down on himself. He came and he shot a 3, and it went front iron, didn't quite get all of it. But then he made a really nice defensive play, which is his bread and butter, regardless of where he's playing. I don't think there's anybody on the team that busts up screens as well as he does, gets in between people.
Gets skinny.
He's just really dogged, too, and he was able to get a turnover, and the ball went to Ant, and Ant knew exactly where he was going to go to it. He got the ball, and people started to go toward Ant. fed NAW in the corner for a wide open three. NAW splashed it and immediately raised his finger and pointed to Ant. And that's the kind of feel good story of the second preseason game where everything's kind of chaotic, and you know the players enough to know that roster spots are in flux and people are fighting for things. And NAW was in a down part, and he just made a series of errors. His 2 turnovers were ones of trying to do more than he could do, and teams recognizing it and pouncing on it. He was able to generate a steal on his own, and then Ant was the one who was able to reward that steal. And I think that helped settle him down for the rest of the game. But it's great to have a superstar who's going to do that for you, and it's great to have a guy who can, even when he's feeling down, know the way to answer, even though he attempted that 3 that was a little rushed because he was trying to compensate too fast. He did eventually settle into himself and say, all right, I can bust up high pick and rolls, or if this guy's not a great dribbler, I can anticipate his dribble, which is what happened, and get the turnover. So,
what about Rob? I think the first preseason game was actually pretty great.
Yeah.
Everything other than getting to the rim was a little bit of a struggle in that game against the Lakers. He did in that Lakers game get into a rhythm doing everything else on offense, the floater, the kind of playing the in-between game, all those sort of things. Really competed defensively in the Lakers game as well. I think in this one, he did again compete defensively, but he did get put in the basket a couple times just based on his size defensively, which is just going to be a story of at least his rookie year.
Right.
It was just another even 6'1" guy just put him in the basket because he weighs 165 pounds.
Right, and very deliberately so.
Yes, very deliberately so. What happened in this game is the offense wasn't there. There was, he wasn't getting the floater cleanly. Finch noted in his post-game presser with us that he said he's struggling with a drift in his jump shot, and I think we all
we know what that means. We see the body go one way and the ball kind of try to stay straight.
What's weird to me though is like watching a lot of the Kentucky stuff.
He's a drifter.
He's a drifter, right? So yeah, I was like, oh, well, they kind of like caught me off guard. But Finch was like, no, we need to take care of that, which I agree with. Like that would be better to just catch and shoot, jump and land. But yeah, like this is again the great line from the interview with you that Finch did with you is what's reasonable for him, which I think I've been kind of misquoting. Somebody called me out on it on Twitter or in the comment section or something. One really good game, one neutral game, one bad game. Is that what it is?
What can you expect?
Yeah.
What can you reasonably expect from Rob Dillingham this year? And he said that he plays really well 1 out of 3 games. One of the other 2, you don't notice him as much.
Okay.
And in the third one, he has one of your classic rookie games where it kind of embarrasses himself because he's learning on the job. That's pretty much what Finch said.
Shout out to the person who called me out on that on whatever. I think I was saying one good game, like 2 bad. One good game, 2 bad games of every 3.
One can be a bad game but not be... Like tonight, I will tell you.
Yeah, whatever.
That,
semantics, it happened. He had a good game in the first game. He had a bad game tonight. That's what happened thus far.
One of the things I will say about Dillingham is that he naturally pushes the pace. Yep. And when he gets more mature, having a guy who is just very, very comfortable on the ball in transition, even if transition just means you're starting out with everybody moving up the court at the same time. He bumps. Ricky Rubio did this all the time. He was just a guy who liked to dribble fast.
Head ahead dribble.
And Rob Dillingham is that way. He's somebody who wants to finish getting over that half-court line as quickly as possible. He does like to be the one holding the ball when he goes over the half-court line. I noticed that. He doesn't like to give it up all that much. But once he's past that, what I noticed was early when he was on, his minutes were actually really strong in his first rotation, and it was because he was getting off the ball more. He only had 2 shots in the first half. He only had, 4 or 5 for the game, I think, but it felt like he wasn't needing to have a basket, which is what often happens when, especially a rookie is not getting buckets.
Just kind of what the beginning of Summer League felt like.
Absolutely.
Right.
But also the thing I am impressed with is that he seems to have figured out, if not how to get separation, how to keep his wits and his handle together in traffic, which he wasn't doing in Summer League. He was when he was threatened in Summer League, his idea was to push more, and now it seems to be to kind of do a little bit more of a speed thing, a Berea, not quite a Berea thing, but because he does it in circles a little bit more, maybe a Jeff Teague thing, but a thing where you're not necessarily hitting the throttle to get out of danger. You're weaving a little bit more, you're stopping and starting a little bit more, you're using tricks that may get you a foul, but at the very least is not going to allow the defender to just continue his momentum attempt to disrupt you clean. And I think he did that pretty well again tonight. It's the two things that come down right now in his rookie year are that he's too small to be a sustainably competent defender in this league, too inexperienced too, and that if he's not hitting his shot, it's highly likely that he will be in one of those either don't notice him that much or bad games that Finch is talking about, because his shot is very important to his makeup. He is a scoring point guard.
Is there anything else we need to hit on from this game?
Well, I mean,
or that
I
you've just had on your mind
Rudy,
in the last...
Rudy was doing some really strong calisthenics in the, in the locker room before the game. So this is clearly a rest game for him, which makes sense. We're in Iowa. Luca Garza is the backup center.
Yeah.
He got his minutes. Garza continues to be somebody who he is very, very slowly raising his floor. And I think that's really helpful. Yep. I mean, his ceiling is always kind of enticing, but you feeling like you can't put him out there because he's going to get undressed on defense is becoming something where maybe they'll only undress the first layer or two. He's not going to be naked out there at the end. He'll be able to hang tough. And so
it's been just interesting that he's been in the rotation, and I know it's because Randall didn't play the first game and Rudy didn't the second game. But
I mean, they could have gone with another stiff, like Edwards or somebody who was, oh my God, I mean, but Jace asked this question, I think it was again at pregame, where you've had him around for a long time, and Finch's answer was, he's a good dude. He basically does, you need somebody to work out with Jaden and Naz in the summertime, he's here. If you need somebody to, at this point in time, now that he's been with the team for 3 years, to help mentor people in terms of this is how we do stuff in camp or whatever, I mean, he is a willing, helpful, positive teammate, which is very, very much a Tim Connolly priority. Tim Connolly he'd love it if his top stars did it. His top stars, at the very least, need to be good teammates. But his middle to bottom of his rotations, he wants people who foster a positive vibe.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things he calls character. And that's one of the things he looks for. I mean, Dillingham is that way, actually. He's really a cool guy. And, you see the people he's brought in, a lot of them are like that. And so, Mike Conley being like the icon of that in some ways.
Right.
So, I think that Luka is earning his role. He earned his role with his attitude and his demeanor, and now he's got a foothold. He's also a really hard worker, which is another Conley priority. And
a little bit more opportunities.
He is beginning slowly but surely to make himself more useful. Whether that means he'll always be, he may be one of these cherished guys. 7 years in the league, Luca Garza, and most he's ever played is 600 minutes or something. But
I remember coming back to the hotel when I was to the team hotel when I was I think it was in Memphis. It was on the road, and Molly and I come back from dinner, and in the lobby is just not in the lobby, but like kind of the tables there is like Luca Garza and Leonard Miller. And Leonard Miller is 19. It was last year, right? And, I'm sure other people had like gone out that night or whatever, but like I'm not trying to say Luka was like babysitting Leonard Miller,
No,
but like he was, but like in a good, but like he was being a good friend.
Company.
Yeah. And I was like,
Luke, Leonard Miller can't go to the bar. Okay, Luka.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. If
I'm gonna hang with you.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Like,
and maybe that's true. It certainly looked like it.
Yeah, it certainly looked. I don't really.
But it's not something that you would think would be outside of Luca Garza's character.
Right.
I mean, I saw him tonight.
A million kids,
4-year-old girl or something, bouncing a basketball to him and everything, and the guy is like apparently like a demigod in Iowa in general, but especially in those parts, very very popular, and so it was fun. It was fun to see it.
I'd love to see him, like, I don't want somebody to get hurt,
right?
But like, because that somebody would probably need to get hurt, or maybe a couple people would need to get hurt for him to be like in the rotation. And playing like 18 minutes a night for. I would just. It would be really interesting to me
right.
like be like, does he still just like get a bucket a minute?
The guy could score,
right?
I mean, that's one thing you do know, and sometimes.
Should we say the Finch line from pregame?
He was asked. Go ahead. You say the question.
He was asked what would you like to see more out of Luca Garza this preseason? And Finch says.
It says. He could pass the ball once.
A pass would be nice.
Yeah, a pass would be nice.
And you know what? Totally fair critique.
Right,
and it looked kind of like tonight, like Luke had a couple of his like deep shoulder. He's about to go to the hook, and he actually kicked it out.
He kicked it out.
The ball swung.
There you go.
Maybe it even got back to him. I don't know. I would really be interested to see an extended Luca Garza stretch, because like. Part of me just believes like that guy can play, and we're giving him all of his like, oh, you're a good vet, and you're working out and all that. But like, I think Luka can hoop too. He just has the heaviest speed I've ever seen.
He needs heavy protection on defense.
Yeah,
but I do think that
maybe against an Andre Drummond type like that though, where you're playing, just a backup center for another team, like
And there are teams also that play G League caliber guys as their backup centers, and I will tell you. If Luka's on and he gets his teeth into one of those guys, he's going to get like 16 points in 9 minutes.
Yeah, don't pass in that situation. So. No.
But anyway, and he's the reason he's lifted his floor is because he's slowly but surely gotten to sub-mediocre on defense rather than an ultimate disgrace.
Yeah. No, disgrace is rough. But yeah, no, it like he does. He at least knows what he's doing. He knows how to be in the way defensively. I'm not worried about him or super worried about him in like pick and roll coverage. I'm literally worried about him getting like run off the floor, like teams just running and leaving him in the dust. That's just that. But he just doesn't have straight line speed.
I am worried not only about end to end, but I am worried about a lot of traffic in the paint. Sometimes, the games where he has just been terrible on defense. It's like so many players cutting through the lane on him. He doesn't know when to commit to people and when people are just passing through.
Right.
I mean, he doesn't. I don't think he's seen traffic in the paint with that much capability and speed going by him. And maybe if he had one of these 2-week stretches, by the end of the first week, he might be better at it. It might turn out to be a good thing, baptism by fire. Or maybe, I know he's had time in the G League, and there's a decent chance that he might spend some time there again if things, go a certain way. But who knows? And if he doesn't, it'll be interesting to see who is the G League center besides this guy Edwards.
Jesse Edwards. Gobert. G League Gobert. That's Jesse Edwards.
That's his name?
No, I don't know. I just made that up. This has been fun. Britt,
a little better than most of our post games, actually, because most of the time the results are real. So we really have to concentrate on the games. Yeah,
and then this one is a little bit more just talking.
It's a blank slate. Let's face it; it's still a blank slate. Or to use another tortured analogy, it's like the blind man with the elephant. we've got our hands on more of the elephant. We get the shape of the.
I don't know if that's a tortured analogy because I'm not even really. Is that like an elephant in
like
the room or
like a blind man describing an elephant? You can only tell certain amounts, but the longer you run your hands over the elephant, the better idea you have of the elephant, even if you can't see the whole shape of it yet. And we haven't even seen John Randall.
John, right at the end.
I did it. All right, it took a long time, but I got it out there.
John Randall. All right. Well, we will continue.
And his brother Julius. Let's be fair.
Okay.
Julius Randall sometimes plays instead of John.
Yes. We're 2/5 into feeling the elephant of preseason, and we have the Knicks game on Sunday coming up next. Maybe Rudy was sharpening his elbows for that, and the Carl matchup on Sunday. That's going to be interesting. And then
the anticipation, obviously very high among people, is that Randall will play. Finch indicated that he's getting much closer. And when I asked, Randall, just in passing, one of the few things I said when I was in the locker room, like how you feel, he says, great, how close are you? Very. I said, will it be tomorrow in New York? And he said, I wish. And Jace pointed out that they don't play tomorrow.
Yeah, so they play on Sunday. So
but John Randall will be there.
Finch did say Finch said that what we should tell people. Finch said that Randall will play in preseason
on the road trip. I think he said.
Yes, and so that is it was just he's gonna for sure be ready for game 1 of the regular season too.
That is definitely
there's no.
It was asked directly. Is his injury? Holding him back to the point where you have to worry about the regular season.
All right, let's wrap this thing up. He's Britt Robson. You follow him on Twitter at Britt Robson. You read him over at MinPost, and you're gonna come watch him and me at Falling Knife next Saturday. Do a live show and hang out for that. Next up, I think on our schedule is Jason and I will do a pod on Monday morning after the Wolves-Knicks game in New York, and that's it. That's our last week of preseason. We'll do one more of those, and then we're 11 days away from the real thing starting. So this has been fun. Britt, thank you for doing it. Until Monday with Jace, he's Britt, I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah.